Well, hello there, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Survival Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. Let me just kind of give you the laundry list up front of what we're going to be talking about today, and that'll give people time to get on to the live stream if you are joining us in the live stream. We're going to talk about the SCOTUS rulings, Supreme Court rulings on the vaccine mandates, both of them. We're going to talk about the one that everybody's happy about, at least everybody on kind of the liberty side of things happy about, and the one that people are mad about. And I'll tell you why I think constitutionally the court got both of them right. It doesn't mean I'm in favor of the one that they upheld. It just means I think that the judges did what the judges are supposed to do, at least most of them. We're talking a little bit about Bitcoin today, not as much crypto as we usually talk about. We're going to talk about the fact that states, cities, countries are going to be putting more and more Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and I'll share a couple little stories about that. I have a question about violent protests. Will we have violent protests in 2022 like we did last year? And will they be connected to the election? That's really two different questions. The Senate is not going to get rid of the filibuster. We all know this. At least most of us that have a brain know this. It's not going to happen. We can count votes. We can see what it takes to do it, and we know there are enough senators that are unwilling to do it that it's not going to happen. So why all the talk about it? What's really going on here? I also want to talk or answer this question, and I'm going to be short on it because I don't have a great answer. Somebody's looking to find a partner, i.e. romantic partner. They're stuck in the state of New Jersey right now. They don't want someone who's crazy. They said they know I say to get out of blue states, and I don't say to get out of blue states as much as I say to get out of places that are total shitholes. New Jersey's pretty high up there on it from an economic standpoint and government overreach standpoint at this point. Beautiful place to live. It's like liberals destroy the most beautiful places to live. But it's not really about New Jersey here. And he doesn't want to use like a dating app or something like that. I don't know, man. I've been married for 21 years and I've been with my wife for 25. So I'm out of that scene. But I'll give you a little thought on it. Maybe somebody in a live stream will chip in some ideas. Mandatory car kill switches in the infrastructure bill. I actually talked about this a couple 3 weeks ago, I guess, like toward the first week back from vacation. But somebody wrote in about it yesterday, and I said if you wrote into me from the live feed yesterday that I would give you priority. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Thoughts on using ebb and flow seed starting systems like I've been talking about lately for cloning versus seed starting. What's cloning? If you don't know, well, I'll tell you. It's not real complicated. It means rooting cuttings, basically. Building a business in 2022 without Facebook. This was an odd question for me, but I thought I would go ahead and give you a shot at it. We'll talk a little bit about why Muscovy ducks are returning to 9 Mile Farm. And we'll have a follow-up on some comments from the seed starting episode about using aspirin to prevent tomato disease. I actually find this really interesting and kind of exciting. So that's what we're going to be covering today. And with that, I think we probably got most of the people that are going to jump in on the front end of the live feed already here. And remember, if you want to get in on these live feeds and you always seem to miss them and you wish that you knew they were happening before they did, couple things that you can do. Biggest one would be join Telegram if you haven't already done so and add the Survival Podcast Telegram channel to your Telegram. And then don't mute it. And because you're only going to get telegrams from me if you do the channel versus the group. And I will always try to always put out, if I don't forget, a notice, hey, we're going to be going live in 45 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is for that day. That would be one. And the other would be if you subscribe to me on YouTube, hit the little bell. You hit the little bell and you'll know whenever anything's going on. YouTube will email you. And if I do like an announcement the day before I go live, you can go to YouTube and say, send me a reminder and make sure that they do, because I know I'm shadow banned in a lot of places. I'm not sure about YouTube shadow banning me, but it does seem that a lot of people that are subscribed to me tell me, man, I never see you in my feed. So I'm not sure about that. Anyway, let's roll, guys. I want to start off with the SCOTUS rulings. And I want to explain something before anybody gets mad at me. And I really want you to think clearly with this instead of getting reactive with this. And so whatever your emotional feelings are about the healthcare mandate, I want you to take your emotions, put them in a little ball, and set them on the table, And then when I'm done talking, you can take your emotions back and try to be emotionless with this. I don't like it, but I think the court got it right. And I think that maybe the Biden administration tactically did something smart for the first time in their existence. I don't say good. Smart and good are different. Smart means it got done what they wanted to get done, and good means it's for good. Those are different definitions here, so don't get confused. So starting out, the decision to block the OSHA mandate, I don't even think was ever in question with the structure of the court that we have right now, because if you judge that action by the executive branch from a constitutional question standpoint, first of all, can government do this at all? And the answer to that one is maybe. And then can it be done by the authority that did it and the means by which they did so, right? The whole shit with Sotomayor and her freaking brain dead bullshit, blatant disinformation lies about, but this is the best way to stop the pandemic. She should be kicked off the court for those statements, because that is the opposite of what a justice on the Supreme Court is supposed to even do. It should not be a question of, will this work? Is this the right thing to do? Is this moral? Is it virtuous? No, that is not the purpose of a justice on the Supreme Court. And once you understand that, you'll understand why I'm going to say they got the other ruling right, the majority of justices. So when you look at this, can the government of the United States mandate a vaccine? That wasn't even decided here. That wasn't even decided. The federal government can it. That was not in question. That was not even what was really used as a defense, right? Or what was used as to sue and say we want to block the mandate. The question was, can the president of the United States, through OSHA, issue a broad mandate affecting over 100,000 people? And the answer is no. No. That the executive branch does not have that authority, period, the end. And I think anybody with an IQ over 90 and a comprehension of the Constitution of the United States, along with the moral integrity to do the job you were sent to the court to do, that should have been a 9-0 decision. It should not have been a 6-3. It should have been a 9-0 decision. Even if you believe in the vaccine and you believe in Daddy Pfizer and you really think it's going to work, the question is not, will it work? The question, and not should we do it? The question is, was the manner in which it was done and under the authority that it was done so constitutional? And the answer is no. So how does that relate to the healthcare law? And this is why you will always be disappointed in Supreme Court decisions in totality. Conservative justices are more likely to do their job as their job is defined than liberal justices. So if you are a conservative, or if you stand toward constitutionality and you think you do anyway, you're going to tend to be disappointed by the court over time in the broadest sense of decisions. There is no health care worker mandate. That's just what they've called it. It's not a health care worker mandate. My daughter-in-law is a medical assistant. She works for a doctor's office. She is not vaccinated. She's the only person in her office not vaccinated. She's had COVID. She has antibodies. She's not going to get the vaccine. She's heard very little other than, well, why won't you do it? Because I don't want to, because I had COVID and I don't think I need to. They do not take Medicare or Medicaid payments at her office. This does not affect healthcare workers. It affects companies and their employees who accept Social Security payments through Medicaid and Medicare as insurance. That's what it affects. It is not even a statement that you must do this. It's a statement that if you don't do this, we won't pay your claims. And what the court decided was HHS, which is Social Security Administration, basically, has the authority to define the terms under which you can get paid. I don't like this. I think it's wrong. I think it's immoral, but is it constitutional? And I believe so. I believe that it is. And that's why I think Roberts and Kavanaugh, who tend toward being very specific, to doing their job the way they're supposed to do it sided with the minority side of the court, the liberal wing of the court. I read Thomas's dissenting opinion, and to be honest, it read a lot like Kagan's dissenting opinion on the other ruling. It was emotional. It didn't cite specific things that made the ruling wrong. It was, Biden administration did a weak job of proving the need for this. Well, that's not the point, is it? And this is part of why I say the people that are constitutionalists that think that's the magic thing that would fix everything are brain dead. They're brain dead. The most important part of Constitution is the first three letters, con. The Constitution gives entirely too much power to the federal government. And the places that it restricts power of the federal government, it fails to do so wildly. So the real fallout in this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of doctors' offices and small clinics and private hospitals and places like that where they know if they go through the rest of the way with this mandate that they're going to go out of business. So what they're going to do, they're going to stop taking Medicare and Medicaid. And it's going to reduce the number of choices that the poor who are on Medicaid and the seniors who are on Medicare have in places to go get medical care. Now, it is going to absolutely be enforced in all public hospitals and things like that because they have to take it to stay in business as a public hospital. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe some smaller public hospitals switch back to being private hospitals. I know there's going to be a lot of shenanigans going on with contractors that aren't actual employees, et cetera. We'll see. I don't endorse the decision, to be clear. I'm just telling you that legally, that decision also sadly should have been 9-0 instead of 6-3 or whatever. Well, yeah, 6-3, I think. I hate it. But if you make me a justice and I swear to uphold and defend the Constitution and do my job constitutionally, unless there's something I don't know about, and I haven't been able to read all the briefs and everything, and I haven't been able to read the full dissent, I've read the summary of the dissent, unless there's something I don't know about, unless there was a legal argument that I could find that would change that, I'm sorry. And it sucks. Next, I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin. It's the only crypto topic today. So if you're not a crypto person, we'll get through this one pretty quick. But I think you should become a crypto person. If nothing else, you should become a Bitcoin person. And so there's just a couple stories out this week alone that show you're going to see more and more cities, states, nations getting involved with Bitcoin. And the type of money that you're talking about, even with small nations, when you get a few, you're talking about a massive amount of Bitcoin that, again, is going to be just like it keeps happening, pulled off the market, out of circulation, and locked up long-term or in perpetuity, actually. The two stories I'm thinking of this week is the mayor of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, wants to put 1% of city assets into Bitcoin. And it looks like that's going to happen. That's a lot of Bitcoin. It's not like, let's say, the nation of Brazil putting 1% of Brazilian asset in, the Brazilian balance sheet into crypto. But how far do you think we really are from this? How far do you think we are from nations who aren't quite in the U.S., fold or in the China fold, the nations that are kind of on their own, really, like Central American, northern South American nations, African nations, et cetera, from saying, you know what, we really should, with our central bank or with just our general government budgetary fund, put 1%, 2%, 3% of that into a financial reserve like Bitcoin. And how long do you think it is before, maybe the president of El Salvador phones up the president of Colombia, because, the president of Colombia would probably take his call and says, hey, man, if we put together a consortium and we all do this 5, 10%, let's pick a number, we alone can lock up enough Bitcoin to ensure that we're not at risk of the market really falling out from underneath us. And then you got cities doing this, like Miami. Like Miami took a lot of shit from Bitcoin maximalists because they came out with Miami coin. But all Miami coin really is Bitcoin. It's like basically a version of a wrapped Bitcoin. It just is broken into different increments, but it's literally backed by Bitcoin on a fixed ratio. I was going to say 1-to-1, but that would be inaccurate, right? It's a fixed ratio of Miami coins to Bitcoin. And so like Miami is one of the wealthiest cities in the United States, and it's going to continue to grow in wealth. And they're actually paying a dividend out to citizens of the city of Miami. Like this is a mega trend. And the cow is out of the barn, and it's not going back in. And all of the FUD that they keep throwing at is because we're on that cusp of it completely breaking out. And I'm just going to tell you that I would be, at least if nothing else, coming up with a monthly budget and DCAing, which is dollar cost averaging, if you don't know the acronym, into Bitcoin. The other thing that happened recently is Northwest Arkansas is now, if you'll move there and you're a tech worker, and I don't know all the specifics, they'll give you $10,000 worth of Bitcoin. And guess who's behind it? The Walton family. As in Walmart. Yeah. So it's kind of centered around Bentonville, which is, where Walmart was born and birthed, right? And it came out as a new baby into the world of retail domination. And I'm not a huge fan of the Walton family at all, but I also recognize the power of the purse and how much money that family has and what that's going to do to revitalize the Northwest Arkansas area. And there's actually some really great educational opportunities in that area. And I think it's University of Arkansas Northwest or something like that has an entire program dedicated to blockchain. So, now you're looking at like not one of the wealthiest states by a long shot, not one of the most populous states by a long shot. You're still talking about kind of a public-private partnership, which is usually bad, but it still does what it does, and funneling a lot more money into Bitcoin. And they'll give you a bike. You get Bitcoin and a bike, or you can have cash and a membership in some sort of like a museum or something like that. I bet most people that move there that are in the tech sector that are young are going to take the Bitcoin. You take the Bitcoin, you put the Bitcoin away, you forget about the Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, put yourself into a coma. It's a 100-year asset at least. And I think that, again, if you're not there yet, I don't know what to say. And, people talk about lifetimes being, or opportunities being once in a lifetime. I think this is like once in a century. And it might be like more like once in a millennia. I don't know when the last time there was this open of an opportunity for anybody that wanted to participate in it to participate in it. And when people say things like, I can only buy $100 a month. So do that, right? Like, and don't put all your retirement into it. I'm not saying that, but you should be putting some of your investments into the hardest money that's ever been created. And if you don't believe it's Bitcoin, that's fine. But all I'm going to say is every single thing that was ever said that was, fear, uncertainty, doubt, FUD crap about Bitcoin has failed. The only thing that succeeded in the world of Bitcoin is Bitcoin itself. All the predictions, and I really invite you someday, just for a laugh, go to Google and type in Bitcoin obituaries, and you'll find a link to 99bitcoins.com/obituaries or whatever it is. And it will tell you the latest count on how many times, according to experts, Bitcoin is dead. And it's something like over 500 times. And those are just the ones that they recorded. And it's interesting. Next up, I've been asked a bit about what's going on with this talk about destroying the legislative filibuster in the Senate. Does it really matter if they do it? And since it doesn't look like they can do it, why they're talking about it so much. So will it destroy the Senate? It would not destroy the Senate. But what it would do is it would make it much easier for the majority to always get their way and to railroad things through. The legislative filibuster makes it to where a small group of senators, if they really want to stop something, unless you have at least 60 senators willing to say, hey, let's take it forward to a vote, you can pretty much kill anything. And that doesn't mean that all 60 have to say, I'm for this thing. They can still negotiate on it, et cetera, but it lets the bill move forward in the process. And it lets what it does is it allows the minority to have a voice. And without it, the minority has no voice. What it would do is it would turn the Senate basically into a second House of Representatives. That's really what it would do. Other than how we elect senators, how many that states like Wyoming actually get 2 senators and states like Florida and Texas still only get 2 senators. Other than that, from a functional standpoint, it would make the Senate function like the House. It would take away the ability for the minority to really get anything done or do anything as long as the majority stayed in lockstep, which Democrats are really good at, by the way. But they're not going to do it. And I'm going to tell you the main reason they're not going to do it. The same senators from the left that are like, no, we don't want to do this. They may have even been told, you're the ones that are going to take the hit and say, we're not going to do this, right? Because nobody wants to do it that has a brain, that's a senator, that understands how the Senate works. Because it is inevitable that sooner or later, your side won't be in charge anymore. And then you're not going to have anything to say about what happens. And if you can get 51 senators or 50 senators and a vice president to say we're doing a thing, then you're doing the thing. So why are they actually huffing this up? I think they're loading up their own war chest to do to the Republicans what the Republicans are doing to them now. Recently, I can't think of his name, Tom Cotton, I think, this is senator from Arkansas, had some time in the Senate to speak about why we shouldn't do this. And instead of reading his own speech, he read Chuck Schumer's speech from a few years ago about why this was a terrible idea and it should never be done and it'll destroy the Senate and destroy our democracy and how terrible it would be if we did this. And they were Chuck Schumer's own words. He literally didn't change a word of it. It's an interesting thing. If you look it up on YouTube, you can watch. It's like 4 minutes long. And right at the end of the speech, he goes, and those words were written and spoke by our esteemed colleague. And he puts up a big picture of Chucky Schumer, the senior senator from New York. I think that they know they can't do this, but they also know they're about to get their ass waxed, as I said yesterday in the midterms. And they're afraid that the Republicans might decide to do this when things get blocked, especially if the Republicans take the White House back and you start having this used again, because the main place this has been used against the Republican side has been to hold up nominations of judges. So I think they're just basically priming the pump, and they're also like, they're like preening for their base. Look what we're trying to do. It's a pretty safe thing to do when you know you can't get something done. They call it they call it the nuclear option and shit like that. Like, it's way oversold as to how terrible it would be, but it would be bad. And I don't think anybody wants to do it because what makes it like here's what makes it like the nuclear option. When you hear nuclear option, what do you think of? Mushroom clouds? People dying, turning into zombies, their skin falling off, etc. And that it would be that bad. It would decimate the heart of our democracy, right? My democracy, just ruin it, right? No, the nuclear option, the reason the word actually makes sense is why didn't the U.S. or the Soviet Union ever launch the Luft balloons at the other side? Because the other side would launch back. And the issue with removing the filibuster is once you've done it, well, now you've done it. Now you have to, if you ever want it to come back, you're going to have to rely on the party in power to bring it back, which is not a good bet. And you know that sooner or later they'll have the one extra senator, and then they can do it to you. So that's why I don't think it's going to happen. And I don't want to talk about politics much anymore. But I guess I got to talk about it a little bit on the next thing. Somebody wrote me in and said, hey, Jack, I'm looking for a romantic partner, and I live in New Jersey. And I know you say to get out of blue states, but I want to find somebody, and I don't want to use a dating app or something like that. I want to find her in the wild. And I think that here's the issue, man. No matter where you are, the way that you find somebody is you go out and talk to people and meet people. Whether you get the initial meeting because your friend knew somebody, or you went to a bar and you found somebody that you knew, an old buddy, and they introduced you to somebody, or you walk through the grocery store and you notice somebody buying some obscure vegetable that you also buy, so you start a conversation. or whatever it is. It is, if you go out looking for the person, you will probably not find the person. And you will also judge people as the person very early on in the relationship before you know them. And you will find either reasons to convince yourself that it makes sense for you to pursue that relationship, or reasons to convince yourself that they're not the one. I think, in the wild is interesting. I would prefer maybe more the concept of let it form organically. And Jesse is saying, take a group art class to meet singles. That's probably not a terrible idea, though. If you take a group art class in New Jersey, you're going to probably find some extremely big government liberal women there, I would think. This is something that I know this sounds terrible, but my immediate thought was get out first. So I don't know how many people I've spoken to that are like, man, I would leave and I would go to Texas or Florida or anywhere but here, except I can't because my wife/husband and their family. So what you're doing is you're already in the place you really don't want to be, and you're looking for an anchor to that place. Not exactly tactically the most astute thing to do. I guess you could get lucky and find somebody that is your final straw that gets you to get out of there. That's like, I just can't wait to get out of this place and go somewhere better. And then maybe you would go. But to me, I met people say you can't meet somebody that really is, high quality person in a bar. And I often ask people to say that, well, do you ever go to bars? And then they're like, well, yeah, sometimes, like, so are you a high quality person? Yeah. So are you arrogant enough to think you're the only one in there that is? Well, no, but that's not what I mean. Well, what do you mean? Well, people only go there to hook up or whatever. So have you ever hooked up with somebody and it turned into a relationship? Right? I mean, or do you have to? Is it mandatory that that's the first time you meet somebody you hook up with them? To me, it's just about getting out and meeting people and talking to people. And the more we do of that, the more we find things like we want to do. The other thing, though, I like the art class suggestion more as a general suggestion, is to go do things that multiple people do, and not necessarily things that people do to meet others, but to try to find things that are more predisposition toward single and, kind of in your age demographic. And I don't know what that is for you, because it should be something it shouldn't be like, I'm going to go do this thing that I don't really like because it's a good target zone, right? Because now we're back to, I'm trying to find the person. Instead, the way people find each other is you live your life, and you live your life abundantly, and you live your life socially. And when the right person comes along, things just tend to happen easily. The work in a relationship, just a little Dr. Phil moment here. Your problem is you're stupid, right? I love that guy sometimes. The work in a relationship it should not be early in the relationship. This kind of relationship, like when you meet somebody that's going to end up being someone that goes into a long-term relationship, it should be really, really easy in the beginning, because it's not going to stay easy. It's not going to stay easy. My wife one time said, and I was like, and I've actually quoted this in many different situations, including presiding as a wedding officiant. I've used her words with this: love is a choice. Love is a choice. We fall in love, but staying in love is a choice. And the work in a relationship comes after the honeymoon period. And I don't necessarily mean the official honeymoon period. I mean that first part of the relationship where everything just works, and you're always willing to compromise, and they're always willing to compromise, and you're on your best behavior. When you start farting in front of each other, that's when the work begins. Right? When you're comfortable doing that, not necessarily because you farted, but what I'm saying when I say that, when you get into that zone of we are going to live together forever, that's when, it's not so easy to say, well, maybe I'm okay with that, when you really aren't. And so for a relationship to survive, I think it has to form organically like that. And you have to build enough in that period that you're able and willing to make the choice and do the work when you get there. That's the best I can do with that for you guys. Next up, hey, in the infrastructure bill that everybody is freaked out about the KYC requirements of crypto, there was some other bad shit in there. Whenever Congress has a bill that's bigger than, two 1980s Yellow Pages phone books for a major metro area put together, there's always some bullshit in there that we have to pass the law to read the law and see what's in the law because nobody reads it before we pass it. Maybe someday I should do an episode like, how would I fix this country, not as an anarchist? If I was legitimately running for president and I had to work within the framework of what we had, what would I push for? But definitely one of the things would be that we have to kill the ability to make these bills and have them be 1,200 pages or more long. Like we can't have that and written in legalese and to where you can't really understand it and that people are voting on it that have not read it. That even if you have, a senator's group of assistants and pages and stuff, and you handed everybody 100 pages and you got these law students and shit working for you, like that's not even going to work. Like in the time frame between the introduction of the legislation and the vote, there's just not enough time for that to be critically analyzed by every senator, even with a team. We'd have to get rid of that. And this is an example of that again. So one of the things in the infrastructure bill, because we all know that cars are infrastructure, right? Cars are infrastructure. According to AOC, childcare is infrastructure. Medical insurance is infrastructure. Everything is infrastructure. But the part they did get through included a lot of bullshit, even though it got way pared down from the $3 trillion omnibus crap that Biden wanted to get through. The woke bill is what I call that one. But they put in a requirement. I think it goes into effect in 2025. So 2025 forward. All new vehicles manufactured for sale in the United States of America have to have a kill switch, meaning that some law enforcement person, some government bureaucrat somewhere, if they have a code, wherever you are with your vehicle, they can go and it just shuts your vehicle off. Well, there's a couple things about that are interesting, okay? And it's the part that's not said that's actually the more disturbing part. The technology itself, I don't object to. The government having access to it is my problem. I think it'd be good if I had, somebody stole my Challenger and I could just pick up a little remote control like this and be like, you know what? I think that, we'll turn a little more lights on, right? I don't think that they should be driving my car anymore. And I could push a button and the car shuts off. I actually think there's some validity there. Like that would be a good technology in the hand of the vehicle owner, right? And then I decide who else has that technology. Like if it's my car, but I want to make sure my wife can kill the switch if I give my wife, that's fine. But the government having this is a problem because, and I think that light's actually too harsh for what we're doing today. This is the part that nobody's really talking about. In order to do that, what else do you have to do? In order to do that, what else do you have to do? In order to shut off a car, don't you have to know where it is? So what that means is this kill switch will mean that all new vehicles will be as traceable and trackable by government as your cell phone is right now. That's what it means. That's the big problem. Now, what did I say yesterday? Self-driving vehicles. What are some of the things that you have to have 500,000 vehicles running around Dallas-Fort Worth at rush hour and not have them bouncing off each other like bumper cars at a amusement park? All the vehicles need knowledge of the other vehicles. So part of this kill switch is to get this tracking into the vehicle so the government can track everything that we do. But it's also because the manufacturers want to build the self-driving vehicles, right? And what did I say yesterday? They don't. None of them want to do it alone. They all want everybody to have to do it. They all want everybody to have to. If everybody has to do it, no one gets a competitive advantage by not doing it and waiting to do it later. And if you actually want self-driving vehicles, you basically need all the cars talking to each other. And so I see probably over the next 10 years, there may end up being a requirement to get your tags that you have some sort of this technology retrofitted into older vehicles, or they won't give you tags. And they'll say it's for the children because, we can't have the cars crashing into each other. And, Jack can't be trusted to drive his own car anymore. We need his car to drive itself, or we at least need Jack's car to tell the other cars that are driving themselves what idiot Jack is doing as he drives down the road. So I think this is all tied in together. And Jesse says pay per mile tax. Yeah, I've only been talking about that since when, dude? Like 2012, right? this is going to enable that as well. If I can track your vehicle everywhere it goes all the time, then I can tax you by the mile. And it doesn't matter you're driving an electric car anymore. Now I can tax you by the mile as well. And if you drive a gas car, you get double taxed, and that just is a windfall for the state. That's the bigger piece of what's going on there. They have just slipped a way in that will guarantee that they can track every American in their vehicle everywhere they go all the time. The kill switch is the least concerning portion of that. It is the means by which you sell the idea to the population of being tracked everywhere that they go. And if we know your vaccine status, we can say that Jack is unjabbed and driving his Challenger down the road and on his way to a place he's not supposed to be. Really totalitarian, really dangerous. And you know what? You know who's not going to fix that for you when they get into power? Your Republican friends. They're not going to do anything to fix that. They're not going to do anything to fix it. They're not going to do anything to fix it. They're not going to do a fucking thing to fix it. They are not going to change it. They are going to go ahead with it full bore. Even your constitutional stand up and shout and yell in the Senate hall people like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul are going to do absolutely the square root of fucking nothing to fix it. They're going to track you everywhere that you go, and it's going to be an interesting situation that we're going to have to deal with as it becomes more and more part of our lives. Because again, I can't make a kill switch in your new Chevy unless I can track your new Chevy and know where it is so I can send the signal to your new Chevy to shut it off. Make sense? All right. Next up, I was asked about using the ebb and flow type technology that I use in my seed starting system. And I did put a video out this week about how that system works. And I'll add that link to the notes that you can find by following the link in this video. About an hour after this stream ends, you'll have all the resources, all the links, all the stories that I referenced over there. And you can watch that video because maybe that'll help this make more sense if you haven't seen it yet. But ebb and flow simply means that we have fluid that comes into a grow bed, rises up to a certain level, runs for a certain time up to that level, and then dumps out. You can do it with siphons, which I hate now that I know how to do it without it, or you can do it with timers that push the water through a low bulkhead and flow it out a higher bulkhead that sets your top level. And when the timer shuts off, the water goes back through the low bulkhead and goes back through the pump. That's what I do. And can you use that for cloning? The answer is yes, but it depends. How and in what way? What I think might be kind of a really great way to do it would be to fill small pots with something like expanded shale, which if you're buying it for this purpose is cheap. I can buy it down the road from me at a materials place for $90 a yard. That's kind of expensive. You're spreading it out on acreage. But if you're doing what I just talked about, basically taking, containers the size of a coffee cup or so and filling them up and then putting your cuttings in there, you're going to get really nice root structure if the plant is predisposed to easily root in a system like this. And why would you do shale? And the reason you would do the shale is when you get to the point where I want to take my clone and I want to pot it up. Now, it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing something like freaking mint, you can literally just stick it in a glass of water and be done. But this person wanted to do like raspberries and blackberries and stuff like that, right? When you get that beautiful root structure, what you want to be able to do is pot it into a larger pot. And since it's expanded shale, it's just going to go pop. And you have this beautiful bare-rooted clone to pot up. Or if it's going to be something that will root in a potting mix, then you can just put potting mix, just like you saw my mints. That's how I'm doing them. They're just sitting in a little solo cup, holes drilled in the bottom so the water can get in and out. Stick the mint in, make sure it's deep enough to be down in the moist part of the soil, put it in there, and it's going to grow. My big suggestion is, unless it's something that just roots, and just roots, goji berry. If you can't root goji berry, don't try to root anything else. You're just going to kill it. Mint roots really, really easy. Believe it or not, basils root pretty easily too, even though they're not perennials. Those types of things are easy. Like literally anybody can do it. Honestly, fig roots like that. There's a few other things. Most things will be much more likely to root for you. And even things that root easily will root better and more aggressively if you use rooting hormone. There's two main types of rooting hormone that you can get. One is a liquid that you then dilute. It's very, very concentrated and very, very strong, and it's an acid. And you add it to, there's a ratio, like so many milliliters to a liter of water. It's cheap. It works. I don't like it. I find it to be fairly dangerous. I got a tiny, and you should use gloves, and I didn't, right? But I got a tiny, tiny drip. I mean, almost a microscopic drop of it on a finger one time, and it burned a huge portion of my skin. And the scary thing is it never caused any pain. I never knew it was there. I didn't know it happened. So by the time I saw it and I started rinsing it, it had already taken a lot of skin off. It didn't end up being a bad thing, but I was like, oh my God, if that got you got one drop of that in your eye, you're blind. And if you get a large amount of it spilled, I don't know that there's anything you can do to shut that burn down, short of maybe what they could do in an emergency room. So I don't like it. I also think something that toxic, I don't really want it on my property. I don't want it where an animal could chew into a bottle or whatever stupid thing a kid does or whatever. I just don't think that I need that around here. So they make rooting hormone, and I'll link to the one that I use in the notes again, that comes in a little bottle, and it's a powder. And basically you moisten the bottom of your cutting, and you dip it straight into the powder, and then you place your cutting. And that's what I would prefer to use. And it is still a chemical, a toxin, a poison, whatever, but it's because it's a powder and because it's already at the strength that you need it at when you use it, it's not going to burn you or cause you problems, right? I wouldn't go sprinkle it in your eyes or anything, but it's not as easy to harm yourself or others with. The other option is if you have willows, especially like weeping willows and hybrid willows. If you get the buds off of new growth on a willow, you strip those buds and you macerate that into a paste. That is a very effective rooting hormone. It's natural and it's completely safe. You could eat it. It tastes like crap, but you could eat it and you wouldn't die, right? So it's up to you how you want to handle that going forward. But that's the big thing. I'd recommend that. And I will, again, put the rooting hormone that I use in powdered form in the notes. I'll retrofit that back in there. If I ever say I'm going to put something in the notes of an episode and you go check it out and it's not there, tell me in the comments and I'll add it in. I'll find it for you because it does happen. I do forget shit. Next, got a question on building a business. And I hate Facebook. By the way, if you're watching me on Facebook, I hate Facebook. Even if you see me shit posting there, you're never going to really have a deep conversation with me on Facebook. You're not going to get 90% of the information that I put out on Facebook. It's just a shithole run by an asshole that is literally using you to enrich themselves by selling everything about you to anybody that wants to buy it. And you are literally a cow with an ear tag. And that ear tag and brand follows you everywhere you go if you use Facebook, especially if you use it without some sort of technology that blocks Facebook from tracking you off of Facebook. I can't remember what it's called now. There's an Facebook container. If you're going to use Facebook at all, use it on your computer, not your phone. Use Firefox browser and use Facebook container when you're using it in your browser. And then if I have to go there, that's what I do. And I use Brave as my browser for everything else. And I keep those two worlds totally separated because that's what a scumbag Facebook is. But basically, this guy wants to build a business. He's like, I'm not sure that I can build a business without Facebook. Well, people build businesses without even the internet anymore. Still, I don't think it's smart. I think you should, build your business online and offline, even if you're a local, hands-on brick and mortar business. You don't need Facebook. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. If Facebook makes you money, use it to make money and don't do anything else. Do not contribute, only take. The person said also they're trying to be more active on MeWe. Do that, float, whatever, pick something. The reality is you build a lot of your following on any social media platform by saying, these are the social media platforms I use. And if you don't say, here's my Facebook, then you don't prime the pump for them, right? And if you're going to still be on Facebook, then I would say, do it, but don't promote it. Promote something that's more freedom oriented, etc. All we're talking about here is ways to communicate. There's nothing wrong with setting up a Facebook page for your business, because sometimes people, that's where they'll find your business. You don't have to be active on it. You just have to be there if somebody goes looking for it. And then you can have a thing right at the top of it that says, hey, if you want to communicate with us, get more information, whatever, this is how you do that. We don't really use this. It's just here as a resource. I know some of y'all are doing side hustles where you use Facebook Marketplace and you make a lot of money. I'm not telling you to stop, but make sure you don't think like, if I don't have a Facebook, then building my business is going to be difficult, because it's not necessarily the case. And, is your business even a good fit for Facebook? Let me be blunt about Facebook. Facebook is a boomer and Gen X platform. You don't really find a lot of young kids on Facebook. And when I say kids, 30 is a kid, right? I mean, I'm not saying there's none there. I'm just saying it's not the young generations. It's not the earlier or the later millennials, the younger millennials, and the Gen Z. It's not their platform of choice. They're all TikTokers and other shit, right? They're not big on the face space, man. So who's your target? If your target is 50-year-olds, you probably want a business presence on Facebook. If your target's all across the board, maybe. But I don't think it's necessary. But I also don't think a person trying to get a business off the ground should not use something that will work for them. Just only use it for that. If you oppose what they're doing. If you don't, then go nuts with it. If you like Facebook and you think censorship is good and whatever, I don't fault you. That's a good place for you. But just know that, I just told you about the government tracking you everywhere that you go with your car. And a lot of you probably had like the hackles on your neck go up and thought that was a really terrible thing and all. Zuckercock has been doing that to you for as long as you've been on Facebook. Everything that you do online, if you use the app through the App Store, or if you're using a browser and you're using the same browser for other things and you're not using specific technology to block that tracking, you leave Facebook, and Zuckercock and his ilk know everything else and everywhere else that you go online. And they build a dossier on you from that to sell to anybody that wants to buy it. And that will at times include your government. And it's all part of the PRISM program. So it's already going to your government. So if you're sitting here upset because you're being tracked in your car starting in 2025 if you buy a new vehicle, but yet you're using Facebook, Twitter, etc., without any sort of blocking technology, you can see the incongruency there. And I just point that out. Next up, on a happy note, Muscovy ducks are returning to 9 Mile Farm. We really cut back on our duck flock. And we did that because we were feeding a feed called Texas Naturals. And I refuse to feed soy to egg-laying birds. I refuse. Won't do it. And the price of the Texas Natural feed kept going up and up and up. And then COVID came. And not only did it go up even more, well, it also became really hard to get. So we had, already pared back. We gave the land a rest. We started bringing ducks and chickens back in. We were going to start ramping up the population. COVID hit. We knew we could sell the eggs, but couldn't afford to feed the damn birds and make a profit anymore. And we weren't sure that if we had a larger capacity of birds, that we would also be able to get enough feed for them of the type that we wanted. We did a lot last year to put in natural food production systems, mainly through aquatic plants like water hyacinth and duckweed and azolla, and that did help a lot. But, that's something that we can rely on in the warm months. It's not something I can, right now I'm producing none. I've got a little bit of everything in fish tanks so that it can overwinter and I can put it back out and get it going again in the spring. So it was never going to be enough. Well, we found a place, and if you're in North Texas, it's about 90 minutes north of where I am, which is near Azle, and it's called Tony's Seed and Feed, and we get non-GMO, non-soy feed for, I think, $11 a bag. So we're back in the duck business more and more, and I found a local guy, he's only a couple miles from me, that's selling some Muscovies, and I'm going tomorrow morning to pick up 2 drakes and 10 girls. And he said he only wants to sell 2 of his drakes because he has 4 drakes and he wants to be able to keep breeding more birds. We were talking about relationships earlier. And this obviously is not going to be a romantic relationship. But this is another way to form relationships. And we need you want to have a local network, you need relationships to have a network. I get to go meet somebody tomorrow that's also raising ducks. And, one of the things I'm going to tell this guy is if you ever need genetics back, call me. I'll bring one of my drakes back to you. If you lose a drake or something, you need more genetic spread, or I'll give this guy a drake once my birds start reproducing. If he wants an extra drake, I'll give him one. I want that relationship built up. And Joseph's asking me, where did I get my shirt? And for those that can't see because you're on the audio, it says, hello, my name is Essential with a little name tag on it. Soe Tactical Gear, guys, original SOEgear.com. 90% of the time you see a cool shirt I'm wearing in one of these streams, get on over to Soe Tactical Gear and you will be able to find it. John Willis is one of the most awesome dudes in our space. He really is. I have tried to buy shit from John, and I get a thing that says my order's canceled, and then a box comes with all the shit I tried to order and more shit. He has supported everything about TSP since the early days. When we were in our first year, he was making people that work for him listening to the show. He's a good dude, and y'all should do business with him. And his tactical gear, in addition to like his merch, is amazing. I actually saw they took one of their rigger belts and they hooked it up to 2 giant trucks, huge, like semi-monster trucks, and tried to pull each other and had a tug of war. Couldn't break the belt. Overbuilt, high-end gear, original Soe Tactical Gear. But yeah, the Muscovy ducks are coming back. And then the other thing I want to talk about, last thing. So if you guys have questions and comments for me, all caps, it's a good time to start dropping them in now. And if you already did that, do it again, because I can only scroll back up so far, and we got a lot of people in this stream, so it's going to come fast and furious, I'm sure. I wanted to give you a little follow-up on using aspirin for tomatoes. I find this actually really exciting. James White, who was incredibly helpful when I started doing hydro instead of just aquaponics, and gave me a lot of great advice on material, product, etc. Sent me some follow-up information on using this stuff for tomatoes and beans to prevent disease. And the amount he's using is a relatively small amount, 1 aspirin per gallon of water. So for instance, in my seed starting system, I'm using a 32-gallon trash can. It's filled, not all the way to the top, because that's dumb. Don't do that. I'm about 2 gallons shy, so I'm about 30 gallons of water in there. So all I would do when I fill that up is throw 30 aspirin tablets in a Nutri-Ninja, a little bit of water in there, and then just dump it in. And I'm going to try that this year. And I'm not going to do, a control experimental group, because I don't need to do that. I know when I plant tomatoes, they also come to blight eventually. Even the ones that produce really well, they still get a lot of blight. So I have enough control, right? I have enough of the control group from 8 years of growing tomatoes here with Misery to know if it works or not. And I'm wondering if it might work on some other things, like some of the wilt things that you get in cucumbers and stuff. And I have not been able to find any information that it's harmful when used at that amount to anything. It either helps or it does nothing, right? He also said when he plants tomatoes into the ground, he puts 1 aspirin tablet in the hole. I think that's probably a good idea. And then maybe if you're going to grow in soil, he didn't say anything about this, but I would think that maybe a soil drench once every month or 2 at that 1 aspirin tablet per gallon it ain't going to hurt anything. Maybe it's not necessary, but you can buy a big ass bottle of aspirin for a couple dollars. So I'm really going to experiment with that this year. And I'm kind of excited that it seems to work for beans as well. And beans are something I always direct sow. And I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do to use that this year. I don't know if I'm going to direct sow and water in with this. It'd be something that it actually would be really easy to water in. I have a lot of gardens, but they're not that big. I could actually treat the entire garden with it. There's quite a few actions by which they theorize that this works. One thing he sent me was the things that it does. And generally with tomatoes, what it does is it reduces disease, increases heat resilience, and increases yields. And by staying alive, you're going to increase yields. But I think that from what I read, it's not just that it increases yields because it continues to yield longer, but the early yields that you would have gotten anyway, you get more. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I really recommend that you guys check it out. Now, Zachary is asking about Jack's Blend from Nicole. You have another coffee recommendation. I'll tell you what, Nicole's just holler roast blend of coffee done to a dark roast is one of the best coffees that I have ever had. It is a fantastic roast that she's done. And I really recommend you look at maybe like her coffee club as well. And one thing I've noticed, though, from these micro roasters like Nicole and Brian over at Food Forest Farms, the darker roasts seem to actually be better. We did with my Jack's Bourbon Blonde. We did do a light roast with that, but we went through like, I don't know, man, like 12 different beans. And then we narrowed it down to a few, and then we played with the roast and the bourbon, and it took a while to ferret that out and make it work. But I would say always with your air roasting folks, tend toward the darker roasts. They just seem to be better, even if you're more of a medium roast kind of person. And then what I'd like to see Nicole start doing is something Brian does really well: true roast blends. So it might be the same bean, but if you got like a light roast, a medium roast, and a dark roast blended together. And he has one called Brian's Blend. He's had it forever. It is really good. It's my favorite thing he does is his Brian's Blend. He also has a blonde espresso. And that blonde espresso is done with a very light, incredibly light bean, a medium roast, and a very like patent leather black dark roast all mixed together. And those were fantastic. So those are some recommendations that I would have. Again, anybody that wants to ask questions, please put them in all caps for me. Anybody that wants me to comment on things that you have to say, go ahead and do that. Oh, on coffee, Plant Propagation USA says Mai Tai Mexican chocolate. Yeah, shame on me for forgetting to mention them. I have 3 coffee vendors in my MSB. Brian Norton, Nicole Sauce, and the Mai Tai Coffee Company. That chocolate Mexican is freaking delicious. And the butter rum is good too. And if you like the butter rum from Mai Tai and you like that you can go there and just order it, you can thank me for that, because it was a special run only that they did once a year. And I'm like, guys, you need to put that on in your regular catalog. And they did. So that's another great one. Roy says, I would agree about vax requirement for healthcare workers where Medicaid is accepted. If there was a fully approved vax available, if it remains EUA, then it would violate their rights. But it doesn't. I hate this, Roy, but it doesn't, because it doesn't violate their rights, because they don't have to work there, and they're not directly fining the company. They're not threatening to shut down the company. They're making it a requirement to pay benefits. It would be like an insurance company saying, we will not pay claims unless you meet certain criteria. I don't like it, and I hate it, and it's wrong, but those are not what a Supreme Court justice is supposed to be judging. They're supposed to be judging, was it done legally under our Constitution? And again, in reading the summary of the what do you call it? The objection, the dissent by Thomas. And again, I want to find the whole thing and read the entire thing. But in reading the summary, I didn't see anything there that changes that. Oh, violence predictions for 2022. Did I miss that one? Sorry. Yeah, I think we'll have some violent protests, because we pretty much do every year. Will they be connected to the election? I think that depends. I think what can really set this off again would be another George Floyd type incident. And I think if you see it really widespread again, it will be something like that. It may not necessarily be cops killing a black guy, right? But there could be some thing that happens that is an excuse for the meltdown. I had a conversation with my brother-in-law, who's a cop, about this when the Floyd thing happened. And he agreed that the officer killed the guy and it shouldn't have happened that way. But he's like, they just look for any excuse to riot or whatever. And it's like, but they didn't. But they didn't. We didn't have nationwide, widespread, violent protests until something like that was able to be used by propagandists to skillfully and artfully gin that up. And in general, we need something that's a very strong rallying cry, because just because you didn't get arrested the last time you did it doesn't mean you're not going to get arrested this time you did it. And I don't know. Now, there's the wild card on the elections this year. There really isn't one. The Republicans are going to win. I don't think that is enough in of itself to cause mass rioting. 2024, on the other hand, especially if the Orange Man, despite my prediction that he won't be back, does come back, and it looks like he's going to win, or he actually does win, that could cause widespread rioting. But I don't think we get election-related riots in 2022. Maybe election-aggravated riots. If there is another reason for riots and it overlaps election season, then maybe that builds it up. Now, I don't mean that might not cause something like we had the year Trump won in 2016, where you had kind of localized riots in certain areas that didn't last very long, right? I don't mean that. What I mean is overall long-term, summer BLM riots. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening over the election anyway. Stan says, do you think a big run-up in Bitcoin might create calls for huge capital gains tax on crypto? No, I don't. And here's why. I don't think you can start taxing unrealized gains on crypto and not tax unrealized gains on things like stocks and equities and other forms of property. It's just not a thing. And there is no incentive to do this for wealthy people. And wealthy people, not Congress, write your laws. Wealthy people employ lobbyists who take laws that are already pre-written to the congressman or senator whose name they want to be the primary sponsor of the bill, and they say, you will sponsor this. And the congressmen and senators generally say, okay. That's how that works. And so the rich people run this scam of using collateralized property to take loans long term and never pay taxes on a lot of money that's never considered income because it's debt. And if you have appreciating assets, you can play this game for a very, very long time. The loophole, if they were going to do it, would be a property tax. Because Michael Saylor's right when he really says Bitcoin is not necessarily money, it's more digital property. And so might you be able to create some kind of a property tax, a federal property tax on Bitcoin? Maybe, but I just don't see it being I just don't see it being a thing. Somebody else asking, I think I already did this now, election year violence predictions in 2022. We already said that. 100,000 liquid. I want to go all in on property, but I also need capital to bootstrap, design, build my business, new truck, trailer, skid. Can you hash out rational approaches to taxes, market, etc.? Scott, I don't really understand your question. You have $100,000 and you want to buy property, but you also want capital to bootstrap and design and build your business. So you don't have enough money. So you have to incur debt. So which one's easier to incur debt with less consequences if you have a failure? I would say probably property. Property's easier to get a loan on, and the worst thing that happens is you lose the property. If you don't buy the property, you never have the property in the first place. Property is fairly easy to sell, and therefore you would have at least a partial out. But I would say that I would put the priority on building a business, because a business creates cash flow, and cash flow solves problems. So if I were trying to start a business and I didn't have one, and this sounds like a capital intensive business, I probably wouldn't go all in on property, because I would go all in on business unless I can make the property an asset for the business. If the property makes me money, then the property is investing in the business, not the property. That's the best I can do for you. The way you phrase that, there's a little bit of word salad going on there, I think. Scott says, I'm relocating from Virginia to Asheville mountains of North Carolina. Good for you. There are worse places to live than North Carolina. I'll also say there's better places to live from a freedom standpoint, but it's not too bad. And it is a beautiful, beautiful area. Asheville is a very beautiful place with a really eclectic, cool hippie scene. I love hippies until they vote. I mean, really, I love everything about hippies until they start voting and wanting other people to have to live like they do. They make really great art. They make really great music. They're awesome, you know, until they vote. And yet I call myself a redneck hippie duck farmer. I think there are two factions of hippies. There are drainbow hippies, and that's what I'm kind of talking about. And then there are like hippies that are basically like, the only reason I'm not a Vietnam veteran with a ponytail is my hair's not long enough and I'm not that old. Kind of more of the aging hippie and valuing things like the land and animals and brotherhood and all, but not necessarily wanting to hoist it on other people. Like, I guess greens and browns, you know, or purples and browns in permaculture is kind of that dividing line. Biden surviving 2022. If by that you mean, will Biden lose the presidency, be removed from office in 2022 by his own party in some way, Trump up and say like, oh, he's mentally incompetent now, we got to put heels up Harris in behind the desk? No. This is the thing. Like, occasionally the Biden administration does something tactically astute. Look, earlier when I talked about the healthcare mandate thing, I think the reason that was tactically astute for their evil agenda was that one was always going to stand and the other one was always going to fail. So they were able to get a lot of companies to mandate a lot of vaccines between the time they issued that fiat from OSHA and the time the ruling came out. A lot of companies did hold and say, hey, if this goes wrong, you're going to have to do it. But a lot of companies just said, you got to do it. So they got all that vaccination done by fiat mandate, even though they had no legal authority to do it. And then they're able to hold up and say, hey, we still have this thing. And so I think they did a tactically astute thing, even though I disagree with it. Kamala Harris was tactically astute. I thought it was really stupid when he did it. But being such a weak-ass president, you do not want a vice president who is a strong challenger to you. And if you've ever wondered, like, man, why did freaking Trump pick Pence instead of one of the other strong GOP candidates? Why did Clinton pick freaking Tim Kaine? I mean, about as charismatic as the ass of a freaking rhinoceros, man. Like, what? Why do these people do this? You know, Al Gore from Bill Clinton, you know, Dick Cheney for Bush, right? Dan Quayle, remember all the way back, you're old enough to remember all the way back to Dan Quayle, right? Like, traditionally, especially in modern times, presidents have picked fairly weak VP candidates. They want somebody that doesn't harm them, maybe gives you a bit of an advantage in the home state that they're in, but you don't want somebody that can challenge you. Man, you talk about the archetype of somebody incapable of challenging a sitting president as their vice president. Kamala Harris, holy crap, like complete incompetence. So it's basically guaranteeing that Biden finishes out unless he chooses not to. Now, re-election, I think there could be a lot of challenge to Biden as the presumptive nominee in 2024. We'll see there. But I'll tell you who can't win it as the who can't unseat him is Harris. Harris couldn't win California, where she's from, in the primary. I think she got 12% of the vote in California, your home state. She did as bad in California almost as Liz Warren did in her home state. She's a terrible candidate, but it ensures the sitting president is not challenged by his own VP. That's a big reason that you got Secretary Clinton instead of VP Clinton under Obama. Obama's many things, but stupid is not one of them. And you don't want a strong VP with the potential to challenge you at the end of your first term or sometime in the middle of one of your terms if things go south. And that's the whole purpose of a Kamala Harris. Did you look into NFTs yet or find the one that I sent you? I have not been able to figure out how to get the one that you sent me. I haven't had time to do that. I think that NFTs have tremendous potential. I'm not big on NFTing pictures. So Dennis NFT'd my own picture for me and sent it to me, and I've got to do something within my wallet to find it, and I just haven't gotten there yet. K-Bonk says they don't even read bills. I'm thinking you're talking about congressmen, and you're right. They don't. .com Cowgirl, in answering the earlier question about buy land or buy business, she says buy an existing business on land. That would be one way to go about it, or buy a piece of land that provides assets to the business, because you're talking about skid loaders and stuff like that. I think you're talking about some sort of earth moving business or construction business. And I think that has a lot to do with how things are going to go. Biden health prediction and fallout. So like the other side of what I just said about Kamala being a really good pick to keep him behind the desk until at least the end of his first term is we could see what we all know is happening to Biden accelerate to the point where you would have no choice but to invoke the 25th Amendment. However, I think they would be really pensive about doing that, and they would be more likely to pump him up with drugs, keep him in the basement more, that type of thing, and then manage him with handlers, which is already being done. But if you get to a point where he literally doesn't know his own name anymore, and it's bad, but it's not that bad. I'm telling you, in my estimation, the president of the United States right now is suffering from early stages of Alzheimer's, in my opinion. I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified to make that as a medical diagnosis, but having lived with people going through it, and it's I despise Biden. I don't wish this on anybody, though, even Biden. It is a horrible thing to lose your mental faculties and to be physically still relatively in decent health and not know who you are and where you are and not remember your best friend or your wife and who they are. And sadly, I think that's where he's headed. Now, what medical treatments are available to people that are presidents and high-end senators and wealthy people that are not available to us? I don't know how much longer that can be staved off. Could I be wrong? Could he just be an idiot? And he's not literally breaking down this way. I could be. But if he is, 3 years, anybody here that's ever had this sad, horrible life where you have to watch this happen to somebody you love knows it starts slow, it gets a little worse, and it goes, all of a sudden it goes exponential. And so that would be the wild card that could end up with him, out on his ass. And we end up with Kamala Harris as president of the United States. If that happens, she does not win in 2024. And I don't even know that she would be the nominee. I think that there would be such a desire to capitalize on, and I think this is going to happen with Biden anyway. There are some very ambitious people in the Democrat Party. Right now, their bench looks very shallow. They're floating the name Hillary Clinton again. That's just stupidity. I think it's very possible. It's very possible that you could see a challenge to Biden from someone yet we can't even think of their name yet. Like they had the clown car circus last time around, but there's potential for some other people, and maybe even people that you normally wouldn't think of, maybe some particular senators and things like that. Official Hartley says, maybe I've missed this. What are your thoughts on Oath Keepers in the news? I have not seen what's going on with Oath Keepers in the news. I talked about this long ago. I don't go on warfare with other entities. If I separate myself from another entity, I only speak about it again if I am asked about it. So I'll do that here. During Operation Jade Helm, Stewart lost his mind. He either lost his mind or he decided integrity was not necessary if you were going to grow your organization. And they made Jade Helm out to be a full invasion of the United States. They hyped it in every way, shape, and form. And I decided I no longer wanted to be associated with Oath Keepers. So I really don't pay attention to what's going on with them. I really don't. I wrote Stewart about it. I gave him ample opportunity to explain what he was doing to me before I did so. I didn't even get, you know what, Jack, screw you. We're going to do what you want. I got no response from a person that I interviewed several times, that I helped out whenever I could, that I provided materials to them to help their people become better preppers. And I didn't even get a response. They had made a decision that they were going to behave like morons, and I don't do morons. So that was years ago. And I did an episode where I explained my rationale behind it. And other than that, I don't have a clue what's going on in Oath Keepers. But when somebody shows themselves willing to compromise integrity just to bring more people in, to use shock and awe to recruit, I don't want to be part of it. So I don't know what happened there. If I knew what happened, even though I don't want to be part of it, I might defend their actions, but I don't know what they are. Going to try this again. Thought experiment. Best bang for the buck. Microstead on a 2020 plot of dirt in the backyard, Central Florida. Goal is personal family use. Maximum savings on groceries. I don't know how to answer that, dude. You want a 20 by 20 garden, I guess is what it sounds like. You should look at the produce that you eat and grow that relative to how well it will do in Florida. You know, you can grow a lot of things. You want massive production in Florida, sweet potatoes. You'll get a massive yield from a row of sweet potatoes. Do you eat sweet potatoes? You know, are you primarily keto carnivore, or do you use a plant-based diet? Like I grow sweet potato, but I primarily grow it for the greens for myself and for my ducks, right? And if I was just doing a 20 by 20 garden, that's all I had, I probably wouldn't grow but maybe one vine for greens for the frying pan. But if I was living on potatoes and it was going to be in Florida where potato is hard to grow, I would look for a variety or two of sweet potato and I would grow that for a carbohydrate crop. Tomatoes are going to do fantastic in Florida. Peppers are going to do fantastic in Florida. Early beans will do fantastic in Florida. Like, so it's what do you want? This is what it always comes down to with gardening. If you want to cut your grocery bill with gardening, look at your grocery bill and see where you spend the most money on groceries and grow that thing or some analog to that thing. That's unless you want to give me more clarification on what you're asking, that's the best I can do on that. We're going to take a couple more and we're going to go. Advice on taking would I want to live here trip to other states. My biggest advice on this is to try to block off enough time when you do it to actually immerse yourself in local culture, to not stay in hotels, and I've said this before, to rent an Airbnb in a neighborhood or area that which would be similar to how you would live there. If you go rent an Airbnb that's on some beautiful ranch out in the country, but you're not going to be able to afford to buy anything like that, then the experience you have while you're there is not the experience you're going to have living there. I would say you want to stay for a week or two, and you want to like go to the grocery store that is similar to the place you would shop. If you are a religious person, go to the church of your denomination or your synagogue or your temple or whatever it is, your mosque or what have you. Go live there short term. And if you work remotely, you have a lot of opportunity to examine a lot of places. There's more than one way to skin a cat, though. So how free are you? And what I mean is free of life's obligations. So I met a girl in Asheville. We talked about Asheville a little bit earlier. Asheville, North Carolina, a few years ago. And she was our Uber driver. And so whenever I get in an Uber, I always talk to people that drive Ubers because I'm always interested in what, or Lyft, you know, what got you into doing this? Do you do other things? What have you? And this girl had graduated from college. She had student loan debt. And she decided for 2 years she was going to go everywhere in the United States that she considered possible as a place that she wanted to live. She would stay no less than 2 months in a place. So in 2 years, she could go to 24 places. And every place she went to, since she had credentials as an Uber driver and a Lyft driver, she would just have her credentials transferred to be able to use in that area. She'd find a very affordable Airbnb, like where you rent a room instead of the whole place. And so she could show up and already have a place to move into, you know, bit of clothing and some accessories in her car, unpack, sit in, turn on her app and start working. And I said, well, what are your goals? She said, I want to find a place that I want to live. I got a couple of places that are kind of on the short list now. Maybe I'll go back to them as I get toward the end of this. I wanted to make sure that the place that I lived in, I would already have some friends and contacts and know the local scene. And I want my student loans completely paid off when I stop doing this. And I said, are you on track for? She said, I'm ahead of it. She's like, I've got another 9 months to go, and my student loans are 1 month away from being fully repaid. Instead of backpacking across Europe, she was hustling her way across her own country. Now, this was pre-COVID, and it may be more difficult to do now, but that is, a different way of skinning that cat. Like when you're 22 years old and you're not married and you have no kids, that question is a lot different than being 38 years old, having 2 kids and being married. Because, and then what kind of job do you have? You have the freedom to travel. But I would try to spend as much time as you can in the place that you're considering, living there like you live there instead of being there like a tourist. Because living in North Fort Worth area, which is where I live, is a lot different than coming to Fort Worth as a tourist and going down to the stockyards and going to the museum and going to the botanical gardens and all. We do that, but it's not like something we do all the time. Like living here is different and living anywhere is different. K-Bonk says, thoughts on the appliance repair business in the future. I think it'll be good, but I think it's becoming less so as it is getting to a point where repairing an appliance is almost as expensive as replacing. So when I have an appliance that needs to be repaired, if the part to repair the appliance is $600 and I can replace the appliance for $900, I'm probably buying a new appliance. So it depends. It's not something I know a lot about. So if you know a lot about it, you're probably actually better suited to see any business can be successful, right? As long as it brings value. It's the structure of the business and the knowledge and the design of the business and the owner that is going to make the business successful or not. Plant Propagation USA, again, most promising technology that you are keeping an eye on that's not Bitcoin. If I'm going to stay in crypto, it's going to be NFTs when used properly, which I think you're going to see a lot of coming very soon. But I think the technology that is going to have the biggest impact going forward, I have to split it between alternative energy, so solar, wind, all of it, but specifically solar getting stupid cheap, and the storage ability of energy getting less and less expensive and more advanced. And then self-driving autonomous vehicles. Self-driving autonomous vehicles are going to radically reshape the economy. There's an old saying, you don't want a drill bit, you want a hole. And I think most people, in our generation, the generation before us, are going to want a vehicle that they own, that they completely control for the foreseeable future. But I think when you get into a world of like, you take the Uber-like technology and autonomous vehicle technology, and you put those two together, we're going to have a lot of families go from 2 vehicle families to 1 vehicle family. And that alone is going to be a radical alteration of the economy in the world. And no matter what you keep hearing from naysayers, that technology is coming. Again, that is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about kill switch technology and all these other things. Anyway, I know there's some more questions, but we're at an hour 20. I got to finish up as quick as I can because I got to watch my grandkids today, and so I got to call it at this point. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be back Monday. We'll probably be doing another kind of variety type show on Monday, one like this. Maybe I'll actually be out back. We have all this cold weather, and today, again, it was actually unseasonably warm, but we had really heavy winds coming and going, and that just destroys audio. So guys, I really appreciate you being here. If I didn't get to your question today, send it to me, jack@thesurvivalpodcast.com with TSPC in the subject line so that I know it's for that, and I'll try to work you in on Monday. I can't always get to everybody, but I do what I can. Again, if you like the t-shirt, get on over to Original SOE Gear. .com, and you can find this and all the other cool shit that John Willis sells. And thank you for being with us today. Everybody have a great weekend.